yeah, I'll take your warning to heed, and yeah, no doubt about that. Because I mean, especially with the sleep paralysis issue.
It's interesting about that. I think the Bible says it calls it in the last days people will be given over to the doctrines of demons, and it will sear their consciences. If you look at that very literally, the doctrines of demons is essentially what was created with things like Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine. It essentially was demons masquerading as, in this case, ascended masters. They're you have to understand. I know people are backing off like, okay, demons, what's this about demons? But you should be realize that this is a purely anthropological statement, that demons have always existed and their characteristics have been recorded by every known civilization, whether they are a very small Amazonian group or they're everybody in ancient China. They had names for them. They did the exact same things. Demonic possession was recorded the exact same way. They were deceptive. They were very concerned about things like, they would cause people to sin and things like these. This is like all over. I'm documenting a lot of this stuff for this presentation I'm doing, just to show people that when I say that demons exist and put forth the hypothesis that I do, that this isn't just from a Christian paradigm. This is something that we have to deal with as a planet, that we've all recorded that these things do in fact exist on this other plane. It's only really in modern America where we have just said that they just can't exist because it's just it's basically its own religion, a religion of nothing having the possibility of existing, at least in academic terms.
Oh yeah, man, no joke. They will. I mean, they'll deny things they see with their own two eyes if it conflicts with their belief of the world. I mean, yeah, we spend a lot of time on antimatter radio and black helicopter radio just well, because I mean, who I work with, Jeff Grupp, used to be part of academia, and he just tells me horror stories of people getting offended when he talks about Second Amendment rights. They just shove evolution down people's throats. This materialistic, kind of nihilistic philosophy. They just shove it down your throat. See, they shove that down your throat, but then you look at a lot of these New World Order, Illuminati types, and they might be pushing that on the sheeple, but them themselves a lot of times are into earth worship and into bizarre, occult rituals themselves.
Well, that's a really good point, and that I've talked about that a few times just today in emails with folks that, gosh, it's to me the most impressive double think possible, that we as truth seekers and know a lot of the stuff that we know. We know that George Bush and his father were skull and bones, and that was a if you don't want to see it as satanic, you could just say a cult. And we know about Bohemian Grove and stuff like that. Whether or not a lot of those guys, as I pretty much think a lot of those guys weren't really into it. Not a lot of the people that went there were knowingly, into worshiping of this ancient pagan god, but they went there. And because it was the powerful thing to do, that's where all the movers and shakers were. They realized that, hey, the people that run these parties, they are into some pretty weird stuff, and they realize they're also the ones in charge. And when the phone rings from the person, the Bohemian Grove people that set up that stuff, that are into that stuff for real, that dignitary or that head of state will answer the phone and know that this is the real deal. They know that at the top levels, they're really actually into the sacrifice. They really are Satanists, which is interesting to me because we begin to understand that too as we look into things. We see things like, people are always fighting about those, the Catholic Church, is it the Jews, or the whatever. But if you really look at both of those groups, let's say the Vatican and the Rothschilds is just figureheads, okay? Both of those people, we've found out from different sources, Malachi Martin being one of them, that there's actual satanic sacrifice. Svali, an interesting mind control survivor, now in hiding, a lot of writings from her also detailing the absolute dark satanic stuff that is going on in the Vatican, child sacrifice, just to name a few things. And similarly with the Rothschilds, these people aren't Jews and Christians; they're Satanists. The Rothschilds couldn't be any more satanic. There's no Judaism there; it's just Satanism. So what I'm trying to say is that if we know for real that these people are in charge, that they're running the show, and that they're all Satanists, even from an intellectual perspective, the old saying, hey, that may not believe it exists, but these people believe it exists. Okay. Well, okay, let's go with that. They believe it exists. As Satanists, they have a particular hatred for Christianity. If they control the schools, if they control the universities, it's only logical that they would be in those. If they control Hollywood, if they control these things, why would we think that we are renegades for coming up with this, like, really we hate God, and we are just so anti-Christianity, and this whole thing that the truth movement has become illogically, I would submit. And I mean that seriously. Of all the different things that people have problems with Christianity, they ask questions all day long, and I love to answer those questions because it keeps showing me that it's actually true. I can give you lots of examples of that, but I want to try to finish this point that we have the nerve to think that we're renegades because we believe zeitgeist. All those people are crazy. I happen to know for a fact that it's all BS, and I believe zeitgeist. We have the nerve to believe things and think that we are renegades, never realizing that it was all fed to us on a silver spoon, and that the people with the spoon in their hand are Satanists. We're being told what to believe about history by Satanists. We're being told what to believe about God from Satanists. We're being told what to believe about Jesus from Satanists. And if you think the History Channel is telling you truth about Jesus, or the History Channel is trying to make you Christian, or that anybody on this planet is trying to make you Christian except for maybe your mom and your grandma or whatever, no, but the man isn't trying to get people to be Christians. That's just sort of this reverse psychology that everybody has in their heads. Like, man, no, screw that. I'm a renegade. I'm gonna throw that all away and be uh, just totally whatever. So what I'm trying to say is that it's an interesting reverse psychology that's happened, that we believe one thing and do another, I guess.
No, that's a good point. And actually, I've been reading, well, as a lot of my listeners know, I've been studying a lot of the older kind of exposing the grand conspiracy, as I call it, texts, like None Dare Call It Conspiracy, The Capitalist Conspiracy by G. Edward Griffin. And one of the things they talked about back then, this is decades ago, but it still is going on today, and it's actually affecting the truth movement, is a lot of times the establishment will make something seem kind of taboo and rebellious, and then the youth and the rebels will be into that and promote that. But when they're actually really working for the establishment by being for that, and the example they used back then, of course, was communism was a big taboo. All the rebels in the '60s, the really left wing, like down with capitalism. But actually, the elite, back then, they would push, socialist legislation because they knew ultimately that would just give them more power to control wealth. So they make it seem as if it's anti-establishment to be a communist. I'm talking about back then, not so much today. But anyways, but back then, anti-establishment, be a communist, be against capitalism, be screaming all this BS from Karl Marx, but really you're playing right into their hand. And then you could say that they're doing that today by making, it might seem taboo and stuff, to be or cool or whatever to be into the zeitgeist movement, but ultimately when you really get past the charade and everything and you get to the men behind the curtain, you're actually in the same room as the people you claim to be fighting. And I mean, that I think sums it up pretty well. And just backing up what you said, that's a huge trick that they've pulled over the truth movement.
Right, and I particularly think zeitgeist is a specific part of what Alice Bailey calls the externalization of the hierarchy. One of the things that she felt that absolutely had to be in people's minds is this idea that was sort of given to us through that movie, probably one of the most widely watched movies in the history of the internet. And it's an idea that we now sort of have, and it's going to be important later on as the next trigger is pulled, or one of the next triggers is pulled in this grand plan. I think that we didn't ever realize that the seed got planted, and most of us still don't understand what we have. To sum it up really quickly, is this idea that that all the ancient avatars, as they're called in the particular one, are essentially the same. And the reason that's important is because as the theosophy movement today, if you listen to like theosophy radio, they're talking about just all a buzz about this world teacher coming back, and they keep saying he's going to be the same as Buddha. He's the same. They call him the Christ consciousness. The New Age always has, and that's probably one of the 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 common things among just New Age from the 70s on to now, at least the higher ups in it, that this entity is going to come back, but he's going to be Jesus, but he's also going to be Buddha and Krishna and all these other avatars. He always came at a very specific time when humanity was really needed him the most. This idea of the Christ consciousness, not Jesus. Jesus was just one of many of this long line of Christ consciousness. He was also Buddha, and that's actually going to play, I feel, the most pivotal role in how we actually do forming into the real New World Order. I think that we have to understand what they talk about when they mean New World Order is something that cannot happen as it currently is. It's not enough to just have political and military control of the world. There's another dimension to it that will actually cause total obedience, a world totally united, and fully so, in a sense that they have realized a new purpose, a new paradigm, a new religion that they're committed to, not by conquest, not by uh, you know some ridiculous means that we can understand at present, meaning that the Muslims or the Catholics take everybody over and make everybody be Catholic, or the Muslims take everybody over and making everybody be Muslim. This one world religion is going to be something that people willingly adopt, that will make all the principles of the New World Order make sense. We're going to lay down our weapons because we're going to be united in this new system. I personally think it will be a false alien invasion, something that will appear to be not an invasion necessarily, but an appearance of aliens. They're our brothers, they're our good friends, they created us. Whatever the story is, we found them on Mars. I don't know how exactly it's all going to work out, or even if it will happen precisely this way. But I do think that that is going to be the catalyst that will do three primary things that we're being prepared for. And if you really watch the movies, you'll see that these primary things are probably the most important, not just the movies, the TV shows, everything that we're getting. Number one, the aliens were here before in ancient times, and they genetically modified humanity, and that's how we explain the DNA. That's how we explain. So it gives sort of modern science an out to explain why DNA, is so seemingly made of code, and without having to believe in God. Secondly, the most important of all probably is that the entire world will have a very good opportunity to throw away God. They'll say, well, look, we were created by these individuals. This whole thing about God has finally been disproven. The whole world will essentially be united in its rebellion, or washing their hands of God. And thirdly, the idea of evolution. You'll see that in the 2012 thing quite a lot, and all the New Age stuff quite a lot. It's being pushed in every possible way it can right now. A lot of people have this renegade view. Again, it's sort of this reverse psychology renegade about 2012. People will say, oh, well, stupid people just think the world's going to end in 2012. We all know it's not going to end. It's going to be a spiritual evolution transformation. That's what they think that they figured out on their own. But that was always been the bag. It was always what people were supposed to think. And the aliens help in that regard, or quote unquote aliens, because they'll say, hey, we created you. We're obviously more advanced than you. We have, powers that you don't. You can one day be like us. You guys are on the verge of an evolution. But because of your past, you have, they're going to say these wars of ancient times were all caused by the Judeo-Christian religions. And this is kind of getting into a theory, but I think one that rings true with a lot of the research that folks like us do, that there is this idea that they will create a war, I believe, in order to make when the New World Order talks about the Phoenix, they're talking about this entity rising out of the ashes of chaos. Order ab cal, that whole thing, and actually there's a very interesting interpretation of that symbol, the Masonic symbol, that I believe is referring to the Satanic Trinity, which I think is extremely important. But nevertheless, the Antichrist has always been said on their end, on the Satanic end, the people that are actually real Satanists. They believe that he will rise out of the ashes. The New World Order will rise out of the ashes of this old system. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that the new system, where we feel like, hey, this is for real. We're a part of this. We have a new understanding of our origins, and God is not real and all this stuff. But they have all this problem with the old people who refuse to believe this, and they're holding them back from the evolution. Anyway, I know I'm way too much information there, and I just realized there's no way to really fully express that without talking for its own religion, a religion of nothing having the possibility of existing, at least in academic terms.
Oh, yeah, man. No joke. They will, I mean, they'll deny things they see with their own two eyes if it conflicts with their, their belief of the world. I mean, yeah, we spend a lot of time on antimatter radio and black helicopter radio just, well, because I mean, who I work with, Jeff Grupp, used to be part of academia, and he just tells me horror stories of people getting offended when he talks about.
That demons exist and put forth the hypothesis that I do that this isn't just from a Christian paradigm. This is something that we have to deal with as a planet, that we've all recorded that these things do in fact exist on this other plane. It's only really in modern America where we have just said that they just can't exist because it's just what we it's basically
Yeah, I'll take your warning to heed, and yeah, no doubt about that, because I mean, especially with the sleep paralysis issue.
it's interesting about that. I think the Bible says it calls it in the last days people will be given over to the doctrines of demons, and it will sear their consciences. If you look at that very literally, the doctrines of demons is essentially what was created with things like Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine. It essentially was demons masked a group, or their everybody in ancient China. They had names for them. They did the exact same things. Demonic possession was recorded the exact same way. They were deceptive. They were very concerned about things like, they would cause people to sin and things like these. This is like all over. I'm documenting a lot of this stuff for this presentation I'm doing, just to show people that when I say rating as, in this case, ascended masters, you have to understand. I know people are backing off. It's like, okay, demons, what's this about demons? But you should be realize that this is a purely anthropological statement, that demons have always existed and their characteristics have been recorded by every known civilization, whether they are a very small Amazonian